Property evictions. How many people wake up and say, I want to start an eviction? No? Is that not how you start your day? No. Most of the time, we do not want to do an eviction. And one of the biggest fears of a property owner is whether or not they will have to evict a tenant. So do you know what an eviction is? Do you know how an eviction process works? Well, let's take just a moment in the state of Florida. If we get to the point where we have to enter an eviction, what are the necessary steps? First, we would post a notice. That notice would give the tenant an option. If they satisfy the notice, that's the end of the process. If they don't satisfy the notice, the next step would be to file an eviction. The eviction gets filed with the clerk of courts of the county the property is in, and then in time, it will come to the judge. Depending on the eviction and what the violation was, there's going to be a process. As that's been completed, the tenant can make a response, or they may not. From there, the judge will make a decision, and the goal would be to have the eviction awarded. The judge will make the award that the eviction will move through, and then the sheriff will post a notice on the door of the property letting the tenant know that the eviction has been completed, and they now are given a minimum of 24 hours to vacate the property. Once that time has expired, the sheriff's officer and the owner or their representative will meet at the property. The sheriff will do a safety walkthrough to make sure that the property has been vacated and to make sure that nobody is hiding in the property. Once the property has been cleared, the property will be returned to the owner or their representative. The property would need to be secured. What does that mean? Well, the locks would be changed, and any possessions that are remaining in the property from the tenant would be removed from the property. Now, that all sounds super easy. Is that all you need to know about an eviction? Not completely. Why do I say that? Most important, what is the best way to handle any eviction? Do you have an idea? The best way to handle an eviction is to not have to do it. Now, that's very much easier said than done. Sometimes you have absolutely no other choice. But oftentimes when an eviction does come up, it could have been avoided. So if there is any way to avoid the eviction, that will always be in everybody's best interest. Now, at the same time, we do not want to be afraid of an eviction. An eviction is a necessary action because of something that has happened at the property. And if the tenant is refusing to cooperate, it's the only choice we have. Now, we pause there and say it's the only choice we have. Can an owner do an eviction on their own? Yes, you can. An owner can file the paperwork with the clerk of courts, follow the proper process, and they can do it themselves. But can an owner do it themselves in a way that might bypass the eviction? The state of Florida does have protections that an owner could not take actions against the tenant that would be inappropriate. So if the owner wanted to disconnect power, if the owner wanted to remove the door, these would not be appropriate and would not be allowed. And there's even protection for the tenant where they could get awarded damages from the owner. So we don't want to make the wrong process in an eviction. So to start our eviction properly, the first proper step, if we're going to have to file an eviction, would be to post the right notice. What do I mean about notice? Well, most of us know that an eviction may come from non-payment. In the state of Florida, did you know there may be a couple of options as to which notice of non-payment is proper? But is that the only reason why we may evict? What if we have a performance problem on the property? Maybe there are unauthorized guests that regularly stay at the property. What if they've turned it into an Airbnb and that was absolutely not allowed in the lease? These would be items that could be fixed, so that notice would be considered a curable notice. Now, what if they've done something to the property that is not fixable, that is not curable? Well, we also have a notice that would be a non-curable notice that would still give a fixed period of time. Understanding these notices and which one is the best is incredibly important, because when it goes to the judge, if the tenant now makes an argument that we weren't even giving them the proper notice, that could cost us this eviction, and we have to start all over in the process, costing us very precious time. As we write up the notice, we figured out which notice we need to write. We want to make sure that we've written it up properly. A small detail can again get us in trouble if the judge does not feel that it is appropriate. So we want to make sure that our notice is written proper. What are some factors that affect our notice? Well, ultimately, our lease is going to be the most important detail. While we cannot change what the state of Florida requires, if our lease adds something additional, we have to follow those terms. What if your lease states that all notices have to be sent via certified mail? That wouldn't violate Florida requirements, but it would add something in addition to what's required. So we want to make sure that our notices meet Florida requirements and match the lease that we have written. We file the notice, we post the notice on the property. Now, how do we do that? Can we email a notice? Do we have to post it on the property? Can we put it in the mail? Well, the minimum requirement is that we go to the property with the intention of hand delivering that notice. Now, oftentimes nobody's going to be home, so we need to post the notice on the property in a place that is obvious. This would typically be on the front door. Got a nice piece of white paper on the front door. Will they see that when they come home? Absolutely. It needs to be obvious. Now, can you send it as email in addition? Absolutely. But the minimum requirement is that it's going to have to be posted on the property if nobody was home, or hand delivered to someone. So might you do it yourself? Sure, you could do it yourself. Or might you feel more comfortable using, say, a process server? They can deliver it, and now you have an extra note that someone else delivered the notice and it was documented. If you posted the notice on the property, maybe take a photograph showing you posted it on the property, on the front door. Now you have a record. Now, once this has been done, it's been sent to the court, it's going to be processed. Now, we don't have control over that timeline. If it's a really busy season, maybe the eviction takes a little bit longer than normal. The judge is going to send out the proper paperwork to the tenant. They will be served with paperwork, and they are given an opportunity to respond. Now, if they didn't pay their rent, they know they don't have their money, there's not really much to respond to. But they still have the ability to respond. We can't take that away from them no matter what our lease says. They always have the opportunity. Now, if they don't reply, they simply defaulted. We will get a judgment. But if they do reply, now we may have to go to court. We may actually have a visit with the judge on this case. That is absolutely possible. If we're shown that we're correct, our paperwork was correct, our lease was correct, we get awarded the eviction. Does that mean we stop there? To fully complete the eviction, we still need the officer to serve the writ of possession to do the safety walkthrough on the property and to clear that property to return to our possession. If we skip any of these steps, we might have to start the eviction all over again, and we don't want to do that. So if you're worried about an eviction, or maybe you had a challenge on an eviction in the past, maybe you've had success, but you know a couple of those points maybe weren't done properly. We never want to get to an eviction if we can avoid it. But if that's what we have to do, we have to make sure that we do the process completely, properly, cross all of our T's, dot all of our I's to make the process as smooth as possible. So if you'd like to talk further, maybe about what's going on with your property, maybe about a situation you're worried about, or something that has happened in the past, let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do to make sure that if at all possible, we don't have to do another eviction. And if we do, we can make it as smooth as possible. My name is Baron McWright with Northeast Florida Realty. I look forward to talking to you very soon.